Britain's new Prime Minister Andy Burnham faces scrutiny over a U.S. embassy grant program just weeks into office. The Trump administration faces allegations of political meddling in Britain through a new U.S. funding initiative. The U.S. Embassy in London is offering grants of up to $500,000 for public education programs in Britain. The program uses language linked to the Trump-era emphasis on American constitutional and civic values. The grant scheme aims to promote discussion of U.S.-UK shared values and constitutional principles. The funding initiative has drawn attention amid debate over U.S. influence on British political discourse. Andy Burnham has been Britain's Prime Minister for about 20 days as controversy grows over a U.S. grant program. The funding has prompted questions about Washington's role in Britain's domestic political debate. The Trump administration has faced accusations from British critics of attempting to influence political discourse in the UK. Washington has rejected allegations of political interference. The U.S. Embassy in London is offering grants worth up to $500,000 for public education projects. The funding is aimed at organizations running programs in Britain. The program is titled Liberty Under Law, the Shared Anglo-American Tradition. It focuses on constitutional and civic principles shared by the two countries. The funding notice uses language associated by critics with the MAGA movement. The wording has prompted scrutiny over the program's political messaging. The notice calls for projects that encourage a national conversation on shared U.S.-UK civilizational values. The program is framed around discussion of constitutional principles. The grants seek to promote freedom of speech, limited government, and the rule of law in Britain. These themes are listed among the program's stated objectives. The initiative follows criticism from Trump administration officials of British policies on abortion and digital regulation. Those comments have added to concerns about U.S. involvement in British policy debates. British critics have accused Washington of attempting to influence domestic political discussions through the grants. The U.S. Embassy has rejected the allegations. Liberal Democrat MP Lisa Smart accused the MAGA movement of using U.S. funding to influence Britain. She argued that Britain already has established traditions of liberty and free speech. Smart said Britain has a long-standing tradition of protecting liberty and freedom of expression. She criticized the need for U.S.-funded initiatives promoting those principles. A former U.S. State Department official described the America First language in the program as unusual. The former official said the wording differed from typical diplomatic grant announcements. The former official accused Washington of seeking to promote narratives in Britain that support MAGA positions. The claim reflects criticism of the program's stated messaging. The U.S. Embassy rejected allegations of political meddling and described the grants as public diplomacy. It said the program is intended to strengthen understanding of shared principles. The embassy said the program promotes constitutional principles and democratic norms. It maintained that the funding is not intended to influence British party politics. A separate U.S. Embassy grant program has also attracted scrutiny from former officials and critics. The initiative is distinct from the program offering grants of up to $500,000. The grants are separate from a planned $12 million U.S. funding package for British organizations. The two programs have different stated objectives. The larger program reportedly seeks projects supporting U.S. prosperity and Britain's economic resilience. It is intended to fund organizations working on economic and strategic issues. The proposed $12 million package has drawn scrutiny over potential support for organizations viewed as favorable to the Trump administration. Critics have questioned how the funding could influence British civic groups. The U.S. Embassy says neither program will fund partisan political activity or lobbying. Washington maintains that the grants are focused on nonpartisan public interest projects. The controversy comes weeks after Andy Burnham became Britain's Prime Minister. His government took office amid the emerging dispute over U.S. grant funding. Burnham became Prime Minister on July 20th after replacing Keir Starmer as Labour leader. His appointment marked a change in leadership of the British government. New UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham has reportedly approved the continued use of British military bases by the United States, authorizing American forces to operate from UK soil for certain Iran-related missions described as defensive in nature. Burnham's decision explicitly allows US forces to use these bases for what London calls defensive strikes against Iran, signaling continuity with earlier policy rather than a sharp departure from the framework set under previous leadership. This shift was revealed after reports claimed Washington had pressured the new Prime Minister to stick with the line taken by Keir Starmer, ensuring that American access to key British facilities would not be interrupted by the change in government. Trump and Burnham held their first phone call on July 20th, shortly after Burnham entered office, using the conversation to set the tone for their relationship and to discuss how closely the UK would align itself with US strategy on Iran. Trump later characterized the discussion as very good and hailed what he called an outstanding relationship, presenting Burnham as a cooperative partner at a time when some other allies are more hesitant. By Trump's own account, the two leaders used that call to talk about North Sea oil, trade ties, the broader military alliance, and the tense situation around the Strait of Hormuz, signaling that energy security and maritime routes are central to their agenda. Burnham also invited the US president to Manchester for next year's G20 summit, a gesture aimed at reinforcing the importance of the transatlantic partnership and showcasing Britain as a key venue for high-level diplomacy. British media have reported that Washington specifically sought access to RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire and to the Diego Garcia base in the Indian Ocean, viewing these locations as crucial platforms for operations linked to the Iran conflict. One US official has suggested that Trump is frustrated with other NATO allies over restrictions on basing and overflight, saying he is disappointed by those who are reluctant to open their facilities for the campaign. Starmer, when he was in office, initially rejected a US request to use the Diego Garcia base for strikes on Iran, signaling a reluctance to let Britain be drawn too deeply into Washington's offensive campaign at that early stage. That decision angered Trump, who later said he was very disappointed with Starmer's stance, using public remarks to vent his frustration over what he saw as a lack of support from a key ally. The UK government later shifted course and allowed American aircraft to operate from RAF Fairford, giving the US a practical launchpad on British soil for missions that London described as limited and defensive. Since then, RAF Fairford has become a focal point for anti-war protests, with demonstrators treating the base as a symbol of Britain's involvement in the Iran conflict and gathering outside its gates to demand an end to US bombing runs. On July 23, Iran strongly condemned Britain for allowing American forces to use bases on British soil to launch strikes against Iranian targets. Tehran reiterated firmly that any country found aiding military action against Iran, in any capacity, will inevitably face serious consequences for that decision. Iran's foreign ministry stated that Britain's decision to permit these strikes directly violated both the UN Charter and established principles of international law. Iranian Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "Iran is determined to defend its national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national interests against foreign aggression. And any party that participates in military aggression against Iran in any way will bear responsibility for the consequences of its decision." Unquote. Iran's foreign ministry specifically cited UN Resolution 3314 to legally support its broader argument, accusing Britain of complicity in this aggression. Iran went further to say that assisting American military operations in this way could actually amount to direct complicity in war crimes. This came just as the UK government issued a formal travel advisory on July 22, urging all British citizens to avoid any travel to Iran whatsoever.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.